The first myth is that the atomic bomb was needed to end the war. What gets ignored in the American propaganda version of history is that 2 days after the first atomic bomb dropped, the Soviet Union invaded Japan and absolutely steamrolled them. The Japanese War Cabinet met the day after the first atomic bomb in Hiroshima and agreed to continue fighting. They met again 2 days later, just after the Soviet invasion got underway, and in a heated discussion started to consider surrender for the first time, with the Emperor intervening to ensure the surrender. While news of the second atomic bomb in Nagasaki came through during the meeting, the Soviet invasion dominated discussion. Japan already had plenty of cities destroyed due to conventional bombing waves, including the capital Tokyo, so the atomic bombs did not actually have the impact that you might think at the time. US President Truman knew the Soviet invasion might be enough to end the war, but he rushed the bomb to be ready before. Why? 4 main reasons. Firstly, so military scientists could judge the bomb's effectiveness on previously untouched cities. Secondly, to send a message to the Soviets that they had this new weapon. Thirdly, to ensure the war in the Pacific ended on American terms instead of Soviet terms as it had in Europe. And fourthly, to justify the American people the $2 billion spent in the Manhattan Project to develop the bomb. The second myth is that Japan surrendered unconditionally. In the American telling of history, Japan refused to surrender and thus the atomic bomb was needed to force an unconditional surrender. Actually, even after the atomic bombs and the Soviet invasion, it was the Americans who gave in on the main sticking point, the status of the emperor. The Japanese considered the emperor sacred, and even after 2 atomic bombs and the Soviet invasion, they refused to give in on their demand that the emperor remained in power. Had the Americans given in on this sticking point 1 week earlier, it's possible a surrender deal could have been reached without a need to drop the atomic bombs and all the destruction seen in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. In the end, it was the Americans who finally gave in on the main Japanese sticking point. Therefore, it was not an unconditional surrender by Japan. And it was not Americans' idea to keep the emperor. That later on they said, oh, we want to keep the emperor because is a unifying figure. Actually, Secretary of State James F. Barnes and many others wanted to put the emperor on trial for war crimes. Americans eventually gave in, and then in the propaganda version of history said, oh yeah, that was our idea all along.